she put a question to the group. Why do we keep looking to others when we need to meet and agree ourselves? And I watched the 2-minute video that was very succinct, very direct, plain language, and it was totally ignored within the group. This was only 2 days before the murder. I highlighted it to the group. That includes every single one of these influencers you see on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube every day, where they all share, and it has come now to be like a peacock preening his tails in front of each other, where nobody's really looking, because it's like the long forks of hell. Everybody's trying to serve themselves with these long forks and wondering why we're not making forward trajectory progression. Sigmas. I've taken my time to reflect on the murder of Eliana Andam. This is something that we need to really give a deep excavation to, and not necessarily just the fact that the young man has murdered her, but what has gone into the makeup of a sociopath that is so callous that he would laugh and joke with peers after committing a crime like that. So we can't blame drill alone. We can't blame shows like Fresh and Fit alone. We can't blame the fact that academies are animal factories alone. We can't blame the fact that young men are being thrown into a band that doesn't befit them, that says that they are toxic, where they are feeling on the outskirts of society alone. We can't blame that TV is making men almost redundant alone. We can't blame the fact that if a young man went to school in a skirt and had locks on his head, the fact that he'd be more easily tolerated by a school putting those locks into a ponytail than he would if that were a young man in his blazer and trousers going to school alone. There's such an attack on what masculinity is. What we're seeing play out has nothing to do with masculinity. The elements that we say are toxic masculinity, men sitting around speaking about women, calling them bitches, talking down to women, hitting women, that has nothing to do with masculine men. Because masculine men don't do that. Masculine men protect, provide, and love. We serve. We don't do that. We don't tear women down. We don't beat them. We don't sexually assault them. We protect them. And a man who is protecting in love desires to provide. Now we got to ask ourselves, what happens when you strip all of this away and you add all of those other elements? That's a cake that is poison. And these young men have just been eating the poison for the past 3 years. Now, I'm a 49-year-old man, and I'm listening to how vitriolic this language is. Now, imagine if you were 17 and you'd been hearing this narrative since you were 14. What would that do to your spirit? And then when you're isolated on the outskirts of society, you create a subculture. And what are you listening to within that subculture? You're listening to drill that celebrates killing men, disembowelling men. And how far is that step into now turning on sisters? It's not even that any 15-year-old's murder is different, but it hits different when it's a girl. Because we, as fathers, as men, we naturally feel that thing where we've become complacent in the protection of our women and our daughters, our mothers, our aunties, our sisters, because that's who they are. They're our families. And melanated women specifically, because the war always plays out in melanated spaces because we're so malleable. How do we remain so malleable in the face of other people hosting shows? So we take Fresh and Fit, for instance. It creates a false expectation of women because you have men who pay the least educated women to come on, who have a particular a particular lens on life, which again isn't realistic, which is all framed by social media, who believe that they can just get the highest caliber of men for no reason. Now, what these guys do with their team is sit down and they're writing all day the questions that are going to be asked and their responses. So when they ask the women who aren't particularly educated are responded in the now. So they seem so docile because they're in front of lights and cameras. And then these guys have been rehearsing what they're rehearsing all day. But women aren't really like that in real life, are you? And women in real life have mouth. They have a rebuttal. They're not wallflowers. So when these young men are getting these unrealistic expectations, believing that they're intelligent for no reason, and that women are stupid for no reason, other than in these artificially manufactured environments, it all adds to the soup. So we would say this is red pill, but that's not even what red pill really is. Because the red pill life was about men going their own way to heal from relationships that had failed. These guys who are capitalizing on it have seen Kevin Samuels, seen the void, and decided to fill it. But these are guys, to use crude terms, who never had pussy in the history of getting pussy. I'm quietly confident between 17 and 18, I'd seen more young ladies than these guys had by 25. And that isn't to boast about how many partners I'd had. It's about developing your character and your personality in order to be attractive to women. Because women are attracted to particular things. They're attracted to you holding your frame. I remember when I was a young man, me and a young lady would have a disagreement, and we're on our way, I'm on my way to dropping her off. And she touches her door, I turn around and bounce. Because you have to earn my company. And I don't reward bad behavior. So I wouldn't be there arguing with her. I'm not here to convince you. I wouldn't shout. And at that time, I'd just go and see another young lady. And it's not that that is a virtuous thing, because it isn't. But it's the thinking and framework of a young man's thinking. I'm going to be where I'm celebrated, not tolerated. Now, these young men haven't gone through this kind of environment and schooling to matriculate to where they are. They've been informed by a totally artificial environment. And then you've got to think about at the same time, because these things all happen in tandem, the levels of subcultures, promotion of not only criminality, but violence. You see, you have a generation of failed criminals who've largely had custodies, who come out and see young people as the fast track to getting what they want. Because now they are psychologically manipulative only based on their life experience. Because before they were the prey, but now they are the predator. So preying on these guys, what looks like a hero is merely a failed criminal. If you go to jail, you failed. Because you only have one job. Police and thieves have always been in the street. Stay out of jail. So now failed criminals come back, prey on children who are green as grass, who also have something else at that time as teenagers. They seek external validation, and they seek it to such a degree that they have very little defense for a sophisticated predator. So all of these elements are happening at once. And what they all give birth to in the cake that they form is the sociopath. Not even the sociopath that just wants to hurt somebody because they enjoy it, but doesn't even realize that people have feelings. Because what is never discussed are human emotions and physical pain that somebody might feel. Now, when young men are ramping in school and they're hitting each other, I observe them as I walk in the street, and I'll see them at bus stops, I'll see them outside chicken shops, and they're ramping. And they're not thinking about the person they're hitting. They haven't even matriculated to understand empathy yet. And then you'll get a case like this murder that seems like it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't. One of my colleagues, Donna Murray Turner, made a video in a group that I'm in with every influencer you could name in London. I don't say black leadership because we don't lead anything. We can't go and bail out any of our people. We can't go and take on the government because we haven't formed the cohesive allegiance necessary to go and do that. So there's no black leadership, first and foremost. There was a time when people would have put me into that pot. I take myself out of it. There's no black leadership in this country. What we have are African and African Caribbean influencers who are influential to whatever degree they're influential, who also have leadership skills that we employ respectively in any of our entities and organizations, be it working with young people, be it working on policy, in local authority, in government, in advocacy organizations, wherever it is, it's only influence. We're not leading anything, first and foremost. But to the point, she put a question to the group. Why do we keep looking to others when we need to meet and agree ourselves? And I watched the 2-minute video that was very succinct, very direct, plain language, and it was totally ignored within the group. This was only 2 days before the murder. I highlighted it to the group. That includes every single one of these influencers you see on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube every day, where they all share, and it has come now to be like a peacock preening his tails in front of each other, where nobody's really looking, because it's like the long forks of hell. Everybody's trying to serve themselves with these long forks and wondering why we're not making forward trajectory progression. So after I highlighted it, one person actually commented, and then 2 days later, the young lady's murder. You see, none of this happens in isolation, because we'll go and we'll take awards and we'll be on a screen and we'll say, we're the reason we've de-accelerated these murders and serious youth violence. But what we do is we're really just preening our own egos, because we refuse to collectively collaborate. I watched Newsnight last night and they're talking about a public health approach. I wrote a policy on a public health approach 3 years ago. I sent it to every single one of these guys. I bought X amount of them on a live to show the tip of the spear in aligning services, solution provision for young people to create wraparound care. Nothing. Nobody shares funding. Nobody shares opportunities. Everybody does what they're doing in the dark. And then they come out and they share once it's come to fruition so they can get the accolades. But number one, there's no community. 2, there's no leadership. 3, there's no collective strategy to protect our youths in order to guide them to a place that we can say inevitably keeps them safe. So we're all to blame. Drill, platforms like Fresh and Fit, the animal factories they call schools, who reduce our men so much that they can't express themselves. By the time they come out of school, they're like a stick of dynamite with a second to blow. We are all to blame. And then we have to look at the bigger agendas of economic speculators who seek to emasculate what manhood actually is. If we're not examining all of these factors and we just want to look at a young man and say he's evil, we're naive and we're lazy. And when we're naive and we're lazy, we're actually complicit with what makes that young man. That young man didn't happen in isolation. He's not the only one. For young men to go and take a young lady and gang rape her, it's because they don't have the empathy of her as a physical being with sensitivity. And that's not going to change unless we change. And we still can't talk to each other. We go out talking about unity, having just blown off somebody an hour ago. That's the crux of our problem. And since we are the only victims, it all comes back to us. It's only us. I don't care what Europeans, Asians, Jews in Stamford Hill are doing, because we're talking about us now, purely melanated people. Nobody felt this death like us. GMB TV, Talk TV, they'll use it as a vehicle, but they don't care. They don't see that young lady as one of their nieces or their daughters or their sisters or their grandchildren. They don't have that. We have that. And we are working. And we're not examining what is going on around us. And more importantly, we're not examining our part within it. So until we actually look in the mirror and deal with what we are not doing, that we articulate for optics, we can expect more of these. And heaven forbid we get to the point where we're as numb about our little girls getting killed as we are about our little boys, because we don't care about them anymore. Trust me, we will be moving in a very different way if we cared about our sons. So we don't. And if we do, prove me wrong. Subscribe to the Sigma Carter YouTube channel. Our aim is to be on the same bandwidth by understanding, agreeing, adopting and applying. Sigma Carter's the unconventional wisdom of men. Subscribe today.